let me start by asking you this. What motivates you to get up in the morning and start a new day? Because I think we can all agree on the fact that we're all here today, so something made you decide not to stay in bed today. But was it the urge for a morning coffee? Maybe the sun that rises early now in spring? Maybe your dog needed a walk? Or maybe the kids needed attention? I remember my own son when he was 2 years old. He woke up at 6 a.m. and he started yelling from his crib, "Up, up." And then, of course, as a parent, you don't really think about getting out of bed, you just act. But most of my days, I wake up and I start to think about breakfast. I love breakfast. I'm as simple as that. And especially over the weekends, because then I have time to prepare a full teapot and with eggs and toast on the side. And I can sit for hours in my bathrobe, just reading the newspaper. And yes, I use the old version of a newspaper. And I think there's no greater purpose of the day than that moment. But most of my days, I'm on my way to work. And in my job as a scientist, I start to think about the workday. What's going to happen today? Do I have any meetings? Do I have a lecture to prepare for? Do I have a presentation? And if I do, what should I wear? Maybe not my regular jeans. And at that time, my brain has already started working. I have no time to eat a long breakfast. I just have to get into the office. And in my work, as a scientist, I study human biological aging. And aging is a multifactorial process. It can be explained as a gradual loss of function, starting in molecules, to cells, to tissues, to organs, and eventually manifested in the whole body. Some of these processes, on a cellular level, we can monitor already from the moment we are born. And one example of such a process is epigenetics. Epigenetics means on top of genetics, so it's something that we're adding on top of our genome to regulate how the genes are encoded. Think about a naked person. So that person represents the DNA that we're born with. That person gets up in the morning, looks at the weather, thinks about the coming day, and then decide what clothes to wear. Then those clothes symbolizes the epigenetic marks that adapts to the environment. And it turns out that this epigenetic regulation is also strongly correlated with age. So think about your own grandparents. They don't really wear the same type of clothes as you do they? But you do share a lot of the genetic code still. So again, epigenetics is also a response to the environment. And we know that individuals that also have a faster way of their epigenetic regulation that is linked to aging also have worse health. So this is something that I study in my research, because we can use these epigenetic marks, this type of data, to build something that we call an epigenetic aging clock. And these clocks are ticking with time as we live our lives across the life course. But we can also use these tools to study the opposite, not just what makes us aging faster, but what could be good to us. There is a study from the US where a group of scientists, they looked at the epigenetic clock in 1,500 older adults, And they found that individuals with a high sense of purpose in life had a slower ticking epigenetic aging clock. And the difference was as large as 2 years slower epigenetic aging. But they also found that the same individuals with a high sense of purpose in life lived a healthier lifestyle. So in general, they were also less likely to be smokers. They drank less alcohol, and they did more physical exercise. So as always in science, it's complicated. But I also think that maybe that is one of the reasons why it's so interesting to be a scientist and to study aging, because it is complicated. So it gives me a reason to keep moving on and studying more of the aging processes. So in some way, I'm motivated in the studies I'm doing, researching aging. And it also gives me a sense of purpose in life. So I wonder, is this something that many scientists feel? I wonder, what is the characteristic of a scientist? Well, there is a definition. So a scientist is someone who systematically gathers and uses research and evidence, making a hypothesis and testing it, to gain and share understanding and knowledge. I think that's exciting. But of course, I'm a scientist. But this is really how research is conducted. You gather systematic evidence and make a hypothesis that you test. But here it also starts to get interesting, because one of the most common questions I get as a scientist studying aging is, why did you decide to study aging? And my short answer to this question is, I don't know. It just felt right. So apparently there are also emotions at play here that has really nothing to do with the systematic everyday work of being a scientist. So I am a scientist who has built all my credibility and academic merits on studying aging, using systematic evidence, but at the same time using my gut feeling to make a decision about this. So let that just sink in for a bit. And when I realized this, that this is not the first time in my life that I make important decision based purely on a sensation of what feels right, I realized that this is really who I am. I'm using my gut feeling to make important decisions. So I am this rational scientist who scrutinizes numbers in my everyday work, studying aging, but at the same time, I'm using my gut feeling for important decision making. And I even asked my husband about this. Doesn't everyone make important decisions based on just this sensation of what feels right? No, he said. And then when I heard that this year's theme of the TEDx talk was momentum, that's when I decided to talk about this feeling. Because for me, momentum happens when something is just right. You are in a flow. You have momentum. And maybe that also brings you a sense of purpose in life. Let's dig in to that feeling of momentum for a bit. Because I also think that is connected with motivation. It keeps you moving on. It keeps you motivated to do what you do. You enjoy it. And to me, I study aging. That is complicated. So it's a constant struggle doing this type of research, finding new ways to do the analysis. So it keeps me motivated. But of course, I'm not always motivated at work. Let's be honest about that. I also have to do boring administrative stuff, and I hate that. As an academic, you're under constant pressure. We have too much to do, too many deadlines. We have to deliver high impact science. We have to gather large research funding. And honestly, we don't have that great pay, and the work environment is crap. But still, I love my work as a scientist. And I think this is because I have a passion for what I'm doing. I'm studying aging. I'm using that momentum to keep me motivated to move on. And I think that also gives me a high sense of purpose in life. So again, it made me think about the fact of this as a scientist. What is really the personality of a scientist? Is it just me, or is this a general personality trait of scientists? Well, there is a study for that too. And apparently, scientists have greater openness, they are more self-directed, they are happier, and they also have a higher sense of purpose in life. So there it is again, a high sense of purpose. But as a scientist, I start to think about the methodology of this study. It's an observational study. How strong is the evidence? What about reverse causation? Reverse causation can better be explained as the classical hen and egg problem. What came first, the hen or the egg? Am I a scientist just because I have these personality traits with a high sense of purpose in life? Or is it the science doing research in aging that gives me a high sense of purpose in life? I don't really know. But I do know that everyone deserves to have a high sense of purpose in life. So I want to go back to my first question I asked you when I started. What makes you get up in the morning? What motivates you? What gives you a high sense of purpose in life? Find that passion and use that feeling of momentum. Maybe it can help you make important decisions in life. Maybe it will make you more happy. And above all, you may actually age less along the way. Thank you.